what should my VA say when calling? How far should that VA take the conversation? For me, this depends. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, ninjas and wannabe ninjas? Welcome to the Real Estate Dojo, where we turn the red lines in your P&L that much more profitable, trying to really eliminate them. That's what Real Estate Dojo stands for, right? RED, acronymed. And so today we have Jared out of Dallas, Texas. Really kind of specializes more so in owner finance. He's really trying to kick up his lead gen. So we kind of discussed a little bit before this about what he's got going on. So we're going to bring him on here, and hopefully our internet stays with us. It's really windy out, but we'll see what happens here. So Jared, man, I appreciate you coming on. Appreciate you being vulnerable as always. Like everybody that comes in this podcast, we talk about your numbers. We talk about, all these different things that a lot of, people, especially the gurus out there, don't truthfully talk about. And so it's always appreciative when people come on and are so forthcoming. So thanks, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure, dude. So how long you been in Texas? Let's start there.
Man, all my life.
All your life. So you're
yeah.
Texan through and through. Okay.
Through and through, yep.
Yeah, awesome. All right. So looking at your submission here, like we talked about, so you have a decent size owner finance portfolio, a really nice one actually. So you got an owner finance portfolio with finance notes is about 3.5 million in finance notes, and you only have about $1 million in debt, which puts you at 2.5 mil in equity in assets, which is absolutely fantastic. Over the last 15 years, you've acquired that. Is that right?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So that's freaking awesome. Out of curiosity, did you start like what did you do before real estate then, or did you kind of like hop right into real estate?
Yeah. So when I was 20 years old, I got my credit up. This was 2007, and I bought 3 houses. That's when you could like fog a mirror and get a house loan. And I was arrogant. I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was on my way. So I rented them out, and then I had a Quiznos sub shop owner finance to me actually. And 2008 hits. The sales are sliding. I'm 20 years old. I turned 21. My employees are 15. They're like, I'm going to cut you, and like all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, you're fired. Yeah. The restaurant was a total loss, and the tenants weren't paying. They're like, we don't have to pay that little kid. What's he going to do? And I'm like, yeah, what am I going to do? Because I was raised, you did what you said you're going to do. So anyway, I discovered that I could sell the houses on payments. So that's what I did. I got rid of the Quiznos sub shop, and then I evicted the tenants, and then I just owner financed the houses. It changed everything. I went from pissed off tenants to happy buyers that were thankful for the opportunity. And that was the only way you could sell stuff in the crash. There was no real financing. It was, people would be pulling out all the time. So I just started buying with the intention to resell with owner financing. And my wife was a school teacher. We lived off of her income, and every dollar I made, I just kept spinning it back into free and clear real estate and owner financing it. So that's here it is today.
Cool.
She's retired for a while. So
nice. I love that. That's a fantastic way to do it. And so you primarily, in order to find those owner finance deals, are you primarily buying off market then and refinancing it, or are you buying on market and refinancing it?
No, I was buying off end buyer. I built the whole portfolio with bandit signs, and then they've kind of collapsed. I've had the city of Fort Worth do stings on me to like stop putting out signs. I mean, crazy stuff. So it's like, this is really not the best direction to go. I got to learn some different marketing. So here I've been all around. Okay. I found you.
Sweet. Okay. Awesome. So now people have like a good backstory there. I know my internet, I think, might be being a little weird, but you're current. You hear me? Okay, cool. So you're currently in your business, YouTube Premium. That's hilarious. You start with that. REISift, Aircall, Dropbox, Zoom, Gmail, Audible, TLO. So, really light, operation. So you're primarily, educating and obviously having meetings, and then working with data. So pretty straightforward there. So you've been, like I said, you've been doing this about 15 years. You've obviously been an entrepreneur your whole life. That's all you've really done is deal with properties and apparently Quiznos, which is pretty awesome. And now you're at the point where like, hey, I want to find more deals. I want to owner finance more, but I need to get the lead gen basically. And so that's where you're trying to really figure out the best way to approach that. What are you doing? Like, explain your day to day right now in your lead gen. Like, what does your day look like?
So when I signed up for this podcast several weeks ago, I was like, well, let me just do what I think Tyler would suggest. So that's about 3 weeks ago. I hired 2 cold callers and just started. So before, I kept thinking that if I could just push myself a little bit more, if I could just make more calls myself, then I would be able to buy more. And finally, I was like, this is just crazy. There's no way. I got to get some leverage here. So I have a little bit of data, a little bit of KPIs on them calling, and I started them on the tax delinquent list because I've had success myself in buying off of that list. Kind of sporadically is how I would call, and hey, you're about to lose your house. Why don't I give you $500 and pay the taxes? And they're like, okay. So things like that.
Would the strategy of buying a house in tax delinquency and owner financing it back to the same person that became tax delinquent something you could do, or would you consider that too risky?
Oh my gosh, that's how I've been sued. I literally did that, and I saved this lady. She was going to go to the tax sale in 2 days. I saved $300,000 worth of her equity. I gave her like 80 grand or something like that. The house was worth like 380. And she was happy. She's like, I just need, give me 4 months so I can make it through Christmas or whatever it was or something. Okay, no problem. Well, then she gets a lawyer and she's like, you stole my house from me. And I was like, well, lady, I mean, you were going to go to the tax sale for, nothing. So anyway, that was an awful experience. So that's my thing. I never, and that's the second time that's happened. I've had to evict a seller before. Of course, he's an attorney. So I just never let them stay anymore. It's just not a thing because they always go sour. It's like, you're going to have to move. I'll give you time, but we can't do an extended like rent back or anything. It's just always bit me in the
Okay. Okay. So I was just curious because the type of data that you kind of target is a good way to kind of see if that's an opportunity or not an opportunity. Obviously helps with the sales side or whatever you can do or whatever you're comfortable with. So, okay, cool. So you have a couple of VAs. They're working on tax delinquent list, and they're primarily just doing sequential niche marketing. So it's like Sensei flow type stuff. They're not doing any bulk dialing, or are they doing bulk dialing?
No bulk dialing. That was a question of mine. You're kind of breaking that apart in the Data to Dollars challenge, and I'm thinking maybe I should have them on bulk dialer and then flowing down into the Sensei flow after that, and doing that niche sequential. Right. I'm not sure. I kind of want to get your opinion on my particular situation.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we get an idea where you're at now. We get an idea of where where you've been and up to this date. So let's now start diagnosing, kind of looking at some of those things, especially some of the questions you had here. And I'm going to read through here for those that are going to be listening or watching on YouTube. I'm going to read through kind of his main 6 bullet points here. And I'm going to answer each of these questions kind of in order based off of what we understand about you right now. And so the very first thing is that you're currently, like we already mentioned, doing Sensei Flow tax delinquents with subsets of tax suit and tax sales list. You're also calling some probates, stacking with tax delinquency, so some stacked tax delinquent probate stuff. You're asking, should I stack tax delinquencies with code violations, or should I try to call pre-probate stacked with tax delinquencies yourself? Maybe you should add those to bulk marketing. A lot of marketing, components here is what you said. And so My simple answer to this is to choose one of all of those and just go all in on it, and become super dominant in that with your niche. And so to me, probates is a harder one potentially to do that with. Not necessarily, because obviously you can flip and sale a lot of probates. Probates is a great list in general to work with. It really depends when you're deciding between tax limiting and probates. Is the energy obviously with probates to get a hold of probates is a little bit more. And so I always recommend people start with like a delinquency type scenario because it has time and money involved, and it's easier to reach that individual. Comparatively to probates, I think probates are a really good second, niche to really start mastering. And of course, those two together are fantastic. The downfall to those two being together, meaning they're probate and tax delinquency, is that it typically means that the family members aren't in sync, right? Because it got to the point where that property has been sitting there long enough to become tax delinquent, unless it was already tax delinquent while the person was alive, and then they just passed away and now it's still tax delinquent. So again, the downfall pre-probate and tax delinquency, or probate and tax delinquency, is that potentially the family members aren't go-getters to get this thing taken care of, which could show a sign that it might be difficult to get a deal to close. However, it could be also a sign of they just aren't aware and they need someone like yourself, right, to come along and help guide them through that process, right? So you got to look at it from both perspectives. Let's talk a little bit about the whole, adding in, bulk dialing into that approach. And you live in Dallas, so the tax delinquent list is like, 150,000 records. It's a massive tax delinquent list out of Dallas. Yeah. And so yeah, there's definitely opportunity to do bulk in that. So a really good scenario would be to take that tax delinquent list and narrow down by the asset class that you most want to own, right, in owner finance, and throw that asset class in addition to the specific location that asset is located in, favorite zip code, and so on, right? And then Sensei flow that type of stuff, right? That tier one data, which would essentially be any sort of three parameters that really you find the most attractive: tax delinquency, favorite zip code, and maybe a bed and bath type, filter where it fits what is the best owner finance property that works for you. So you could do that, right? And maybe out of that 150,000 tax delinquent records or whatever, maybe that ends up being 5,000 records out of it, right? And so those 5,000, just throw those into the Sensei flow or whatever, and you can start working through that data that way. Everything else you can throw in a bulk dialer, right? Because what you really got to figure out is like, what is that niche again that you're going to be focusing on? I'm just going to go all in on that niche. I'm going to do the bulk dialing against it. I'm going to do the Sensei flow against it, but I'm not going to put all of that at the top. I'm going to pluck out that stuff that I want as the priority. I'm going to throw that in that more niche prospecting, because really, ultimately, I want to get to where I'm starting to send direct mail to those. And those, especially like those owner occupied tax delinquent properties, are really great ones to send direct mail to. So you want to kind of pluck those out, and be able to have like that. Hey, I want to get in front of these people right now. I don't want to wait for potentially a predictive dialer to skip the numbers and all that kind of stuff. I want to know who I'm not going to reach right away. And with that, Sensei flow type process, that happens within 72 hours of a given record, right? So really, that's what we want to do. That top, 1 to 10% of that data set of that overarching tax delinquent list that you have. And so in that, you mentioned the tax suits and tax sales list. So, for those that aren't aware, tax delinquency typically goes in phases, right? Initially, like, hey, you're not paying your taxes, boom, there's that. Hey, you're not paying your taxes for a period of time. Boom, you're now tax delinquent. Boom, you've been tax delinquent for a period of time. Now you're going to tax sale, or that even before that, you have the certificate that gets sold depending on the state and your laws and how the tax code works in there. In Florida, this is how it works. I think Texas is really similar to Florida. 2 years, you become tax delinquency. That certificate gets sold so that the state can get back some taxes. That certificate holder now owns the certificates of the taxes, and then essentially after 3 years, the property goes to auction. It gets slotted for auction. It sells. The certificate owner gets their money back plus their interest. If it doesn't sell, the certificate owner can basically essentially take over the home until the real owner comes back and says, hey, wait, that's my home. What are you doing with it? And they can be like, well, I've had it for like 2 years now. I fixed it up, and they can require or have that seller give the property back, but they got to pay it back to them with their interest plus interest on their earnings. I think in Florida, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on this for anyone who's in Florida, look it up. But I want to say for the repairs of a property from a certificate owner, if it gets to that point, it's like 18% interest. So if you do $50,000 of repairs on a property and someone comes back and says, oh, well, I want my property back, you're gonna have to pay a substantial amount of interest on to get it back. So most of the time what happens is they just deed it over because they don't, fully, because the certificate owner doesn't actually have the full deed, but the tax sale does. Nevertheless, anyway, understand obviously your tax, laws and the whole process and stuff, and kind of go from there. But own the whole thing, and then you can trickle in as you add in VAs. You can trickle in and have VAs focus on specific niches, right? So with the tax delinquency and probates, or the tax sales list and the probates, tax sales typically come out every month or 2 months or quarterly, depending on how many there is. In Florida right now, it's every month or every quarter. I'm sure in Texas it might be every week in Texas.
Yeah, it's monthly.
Okay, so something like that, right? You know how we had that bulk list that's being called the whole thing. Technically, the stuff that's going to tax sale list is inside there somewhere. They're just getting slotted to be, sold at auction. And then, but what we can do is we can say, hey, on a monthly basis, we're going to pluck out, we're going to find all those ones that are going to tax sale, and we're going to make sure that we Sensei flow those if they haven't already been. And so really we're trying to dominate and get in front of those as much as possible. And ultimately, potentially, obviously, if we know we can't reach them, maybe we end up having that insight to bid at, the tax sale, if it makes sense. But with probates, pre-probates, it's the same way, right? But the difference between probates and tax delinquency is that tax delinquent, you have this massive initial list, massive, right? With probates, you also have a pretty large initial list that you can buy, but it becomes out of date way faster, right, than the tax delinquent list, because with probate, you could initially buy, let's say, 5,000 records of probates that happened in the last 3 years or 2 years or whatever. Well, there's a huge sum of those that could already have been sold, purchased, or whatever. So the lists that you buy typically aren't as accurate in historical, but they're accurate on a weekly or monthly basis, right? Every time a new probate comes in. So it's really important with probates to really get that first to market system set up, right? So do the backfill of the data. So intake, data from, like, you're in Texas, so Propelio would be a great, location to get, probate data. So get that backfill of probate data, and let's say that's 2,000 records, right? Go ahead and market to that, and feel free to throw that in a bulk dialer or something like that. Just get it done, get marketed to, and then go to your county and get the process driven in, if you haven't already, to get that probate data on a weekly or monthly basis, preferably weekly basis, even daily, to intake. And every single day, basically, you're bringing down new probates, skip tracing it, getting it in, and calling it. And that's the system you want to get to when it comes to probate. Probate, a lot of people just pull that list monthly from some source or something like that, and they're playing catch up every single month. And so you really want to get it as quickly as possible. As soon as it finds out that there's a death, you're reaching out, to do services. You want to be first to market as quickly as possible without being, an ambulance chaser, essentially, in their eyes, right? So at any rate, bulk dialing, yeah, sure. Do you need to add bulk dialing right now without having, like, consistency in lead gen? I don't think so, but it's preference to you and your resources on if you want to, right? You could totally add, someone on the dialer. You can have someone on Sensei Flow, and you can have 2 VAs, but it really just depends on how, like, what you want your overhead to be right now, while, having your portfolio and everything you got going on, right? So you just got to do that evaluation. Like, okay, well, it's $700 per VA or whatever a month. The bulk dialer, everything. Maybe I'm at like a total of $2,500 a month I'm spending operationally as a whole, and I'm willing to accept $2,500 a month, or $25,000 a year, in order to pick up some new opportunity, right? Because I know that if I get at least one deal, I'm going to get that, and just my equity, net worth gain alone is going to compensate, right? And so it really depends on if your cash flow right now covers your expenses, by an excess, and you don't need the active income from these deals, and you're just really trying to continue to build a legacy. Then that changes, because you're not the atypical situation of someone who's like coming in and trying to build wholesaling and get things going. I mean, not to say that you're not ambitious in getting more money, right? But your decisions are might be a little bit different than how I would approach somebody else. That, hey, you should only do Sensei Flow because you can only afford X amount of dollars a month, because you have the opportunity to add injection in if you really wanted to. So yeah, that's preference. But to give you a clear one, rather than leaving it vague for you, what I would do in your situation, if I was in your situation, is I would get 2 individuals, straight Sensei flowing the top 1 to 10% of that tax delinquent data. And I would do at least 1,000 to 5,000 records that way, and get a really base KPI to understand. And then I would make the decision on if I wanted to move one of those people into bulk to hit the other data set, or if that makes sense. Because really, at 1,000 records a month per VA, which is attainable to work through, that would be X amount of phone numbers and text messages and RVMs, voicemails left, all that stuff from that process. That also means that out of those records, you're going to end up having at least 500 or so records that need to be sent direct mail every single month, right? Adding every single month from each VA. Right. So, that stacks up to say, okay, in the first month, we reached out to, say 2,000 prospects total. We got a bunch of leads from it. We should get at least 2 deals from that. But there's 500 now people, or 500 to 1,000 of those people that are fully exhausted. I didn't reach them via the phone, and I need to send direct mail to do that next touch, or start reaching out to siblings. So every month, you're increasing direct mail costs by anywhere between $250 and $500 a month.
Okay.
Right. And so you got to account for that. And where a lot of people mess up is they end up adding in VAs and everything else because they're trying to do all this outbound. Right. And so they're not fully doing the direct mail side, because then it gets to the point where they can't afford it. And so they're like, oh, I'll just sacrifice the direct mail. And that's a huge component of building that fully balanced marketing strategy to have ultimate, omni marketing against these individuals that we're trying to convert. Especially with things like tax delinquency and probate and problems that people naturally are avoiding. You got to get in front of them in a lot of different ways, right? They're getting debt. People that are tax delinquency typically are getting called by more than just the city to get them money from them. So they're a lot less likely to pick up the phone, but they get to a point where they're might be comfortable searching on YouTube or Facebook and saying, or Google rather, and being like, how to pay off my taxes or sell my house for cash, like they Google how to get out of their situation, right? So you want to be able to be found there, right? But we probably don't want to be like spending a ton of money trying to focus on PPC and SEO right now, but we want to have a website. So what we want to do then instead is being like, cool, let me just send this postcard that says, hey, I specialize in tax delinquency, right? Calling out their problem and you becoming the person that is that specialization. And then when they go to your website, they go to that URL on that postcard, they're going to land there and they're going to see like, holy shit, this is the whole tax filing process. Every other website I go to, they just say they buy houses. This person, they buy tax delinquent property specifically. They have attorneys, they have all the people that can help me out, right? And so really focus on that niche and really dominate, and do the same thing with probates. Then you can do tax delinquency and probates. I think too often people generalistic right? And like people that are going through problems don't want the generalist; they want the expert that's going to help them, right?
Can I send custom mail through REISift, like with that custom message?
You will be able to this next quarter. We're working on specific mail pieces for tax delinquency and things like that. And we'll even have the opportunity for users to be able to create a custom piece for their specific account that they can send through, like just their own branded one. So that'll be coming this quarter. Yeah.
Yeah, ready for that.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that. I'm waiting for my own business for that. So hopefully that helps with the whole, the tax delinquency probate. Should I do bulk? Should I not do bulk? It gives you some direction to kind of handle in the next, over this next quarter. You say, what should my VA say when calling? How far should that VA take the conversation? For me, this depends on their experience and their ability to understand and communicate effectively. But initially, it should just be to the point if they're interested in in selling their property, not receiving an offer. I don't like when people say, "Oh, you're interested in receiving an offer." Everybody's going to want to receive an offer. That just creates extra work. Are they interested in selling the property? That's what we really want to know. And if they say yes to that, yeah. Then it should kick over. And then as they become more experienced, I'm okay with them getting to the point where they start planting the seed with sellers on, okay, do you have any idea what you might be looking to get out of it if you did sell it? Like I'm okay with them asking that question. The biggest problem that people make when the VA asks that question and the seller gives a response, okay, is that when that seller gives a really high number, they assume they're not motivated. When in all reality, they're just giving that number just because they just threw a number out, right? So Pete, you still need to make sure you call with a lead manager or call yourself in order to figure out, well, why are they interested in selling? And is this number a real number, or did they just throw it out because they were busy at the moment? Like making sure you're doing the proper afterwards. But outbound VAs, I don't think they should really necessarily go past that stage. They shouldn't go past the stage of getting either a number from the seller that they might be interested in, or just figuring out if they want to sell. Period.
So I started, the first sentence they ask is, "Are you the owner of 123 Main Street?" And there's a yes or no. And then it was, "Are you interested in selling your property?" Do you like that opener? Because as I understand what you teach, the first step is trying to get to a correct number. So
yeah. I don't like asking if they are the owner. I like assuming that they are. So if I'm doing an intro, I'm like, I'm going to say, I'm going to open up with, "Hey, Johnny, what's going on?"
Okay. And if my
right.
if my data is wrong and it says Johnny's the owner, but my data's off. Like I've noticed with Propelio, I use a bunch of Propelio data.
Yeah.
And it's like, ooh, I'm not sure they updated everything.
Yeah, well, that might happen. And if they say, "Oh, I'm not Johnny," like, "Oh, okay. Do you happen to be familiar with the property at 123 Main Street?" And if they say, "Oh, yeah, I own that property," I'm like, "Oh, okay, I must have mixed up the names." And so just trying to always start the conversation from from the perspective that I know who you are, like we're already friends, and not, are you so and so? Because you want to eliminate the opportunity for them to have an exit. And by asking in the beginning, like, "Hey, are you so and so?" that gives an exit for them to deny it. Right. And so, but if you call them like, "Hey, Johnny," and they say, "What? Hello, who is?" Yeah, who's this? It's Johnny now. And so you're getting the same answer that you're trying to get, but more direct, because if you say their name, they're going to respond to that more emotionally than if you ask if it is them or not them. Gotcha. So come from the perspective of like, assuming that it's them and assuming that that person is the owner. Sometimes we get where, yeah, this is Johnny, but I have no idea what property you're talking about, which happens pretty often with skip tracing, right? It gets one Johnny and another Johnny mixed up. If it ends up being where it is a different owner, then yeah, you just kind of handle that as it happens, and which with probate is going to be more common than tax delinquency. But really, that's why you also want to try to get this stuff from the county with this really niche stuff. Get the bulk stuff initially, but then build the process internally to get it directly from the source, and you'll end up being thankful you did. Okay. I have one full-time caller and one part-time caller. I think we already answered this. Which list should they go? I think you should just focus on the one data set initially and get consistency and KPIs around that. Tags versus tasks for callbacks. You should always use tasks 100%, period. Like, you're going to add a tag. Tags are used only for filtering, not for people knowing what they need to do. Tasks should be used 100% for, hey, I called through this record and they didn't answer. Create the task so I can call tomorrow. Tasks is really, really important so that you can, from the view of going on your manager's view on tasks, you can look to see, okay, well, how many tasks does my VA have this week? Okay, they have 150 tasks, which typically means for a Sensei Flow person, that means they're going to have 150 follow-ups to do. And then in addition to the inbound. But if you see they have 500 tasks for the week, there's a huge chance they're not going to be able to complete all the numbers of outbound because they have a bunch of tasks somehow. And so tasks are really important. You don't want to use just tags to say, hey, do this tomorrow, call attempt 2. You should be adding a task. But you can use a tag to automatically add the task if you wanted to, right, through sequences, which we cover in that data to dollars challenge, right? So, just if you catch up on that, you'll get caught up entirely on that whole Sensei Flow process. But essentially for those that are listening, what it looks like is, hey, I open up a record. They have 3 phone numbers, call number 1, call number 2, call number 3. One's a wrong number. One says never call me again, and the other one doesn't answer. All right, well, it's not a dead number because it kept ringing, so I know someone, he probably owns it. So I'm going to go ahead and try and call this person again tomorrow at that same exact number. So I create a task to follow up attempt 1. And then tomorrow when I wake up in the morning, I look at my tasks I need to do for the day, and I start at task number 1. I open it up and I see, okay, here's this record I called yesterday. I only need to call 1 phone number today because the other 2 I already know are wrong number in DNC. So I'm gonna call that number. It rings again. Nobody answers. It's a mobile number. So each time I have texted it, nobody's responded back to my text messages. So I'm gonna create another second attempt. I'm gonna do that for 3 days in a row for 3 total attempts. And if I still don't get someone picking up that phone after that many attempts, after that 3 text messages, the voicemails I might have left, and 3 days in a row at different times of the day, most likely, then a person's probably never going to answer that phone number. It's a good chance. It's more likely they're not going to than they are. So I'm going to kick that a direct mail piece. If I haven't skip traced in a second location, I'm going to skip trace in a second location, try that whole process all over again. And if I still haven't reached them after the second location, then, well, now I need to start figuring out, well, who else might be familiar with this property. Looking up siblings, kids, mothers, daughters, all that kind of stuff, right? And trying to reach out to them. But we're not going to do that to all of the records because that would take a ton of time. You're going to get a backlog of them, and, which is a good thing. That means a backlog is good because it means you're not marketing to them, which means you're saving money, right? Because you've already exhausted them. And so we're going to send direct mail to all of those, and all that return mail that comes back, which is typically about 2 to 5% of the direct mail you send, is going to get returned. That return mail is the mail that I'm then going to have a VA go out and research the family members and figure out, can we get a hold of somebody? And that's through that deep prospecting process, right? So that, that's kind of just, for those that aren't familiar with it, you're going to learn that in the data dollars challenge, which you're already in. So just go back and start at day 6 again and, work back up to day 9. And you're going to get that whole process. Like, we literally break it down step by step, including creating the tasks and everything. And so I think you'll be okay on that. And then, does the air call integration append call recordings to REISift? It does. I'm going to show you an example of that really quick inside of my account. I don't have a recording in here, however, but we're going to show you where it would be as an example. Let me just go ahead and share my screen real quick. This is the one that we're doing in the Data to Dollars Challenge account. So let me share. And for those that are on audio, you're gonna have to just chill for a second, go to the YouTube channel and watch the video on this. But every single record obviously has an activity log. So I'm just gonna go into the Sensei Flow Phase 2 here data, and just find, I gotta find a record here. Actually, let me do this. Let me go under my needs work, because I know that I had called one as an example when I set up the air call integration. I just don't know which one it was. So let's just look and see if it shows up. Okay, so here you go. So, well, I didn't call it ever, I guess. It's just, this is just showing me sending it to Calltools back and forth. But where it'll end up being is it'll end up being underneath of your activity log, and you can filter by under the events. You can filter by phone events, and you can do it that way from specific users, and you can see those recordings. In fact, maybe I can just log in real quick to my normal account and see if I can't find a record from there. Oops, am I in my normal account? Yeah. There we go. Let's look at this one here. Has this got any activity? No. Oh, you know what? I can do this. I'll search my name, and I have this example record here that I'm sure has some calls. Here you go. So this is what it'll look like. So it'll have a call icon here between the owner, and if you click on that call, it'll open up air call and go to the recording. Okay. So the big thing though that you need to make sure is there. I'm gonna log into my air call account really quick. The big thing you got to make sure is that when you add a new number in air call, that you add the integration to air call. Okay. So if I were to open up, if I were to go to my, I can do it in a couple different ways. I can go to numbers, and then I can click on the actual number itself, click on integrations, and then make sure, like, see how air call integration isn't on this number. But if I were to go back to I know I just named one. I just created one for the challenge. Was it this one maybe? It's on this one, right? Yeah. So just make sure that's there. The other way that you can do that is just by going to integrations and APIs and then clicking on your REISift integration. You can see what numbers are connected. So that could be the problem there. So just check on that. Okay. So what it sounds like to me is it sounds like really what we want to do is we want to get some dialed in on the tax delinquencies, figure out what data we want to market to specifically out of that tax delinquency in the neighborhood. Make sure we have a flow and process set up to skip trace those tax delinquencies on a first round, call through them, make sure if we don't reach them after our first call through, we have a second skip tracing location, we try again. If we don't reach them through our second location, we send that direct mail to those individuals, right? And try to create that inbound approach. In the meantime, we're definitely going to make sure that we have like a carrot website that's kind of, start to be focused and tailored to, tax delinquency. And we're going to put that website URL on our direct mail. Okay. So that way, if they see that, if they're introverts, they can go to the website first, right? And it can be you with a video explaining the process, explaining that you own a portfolio of properties that are in the same exact situation they're in, and now those people have moved on type, situation, building that credibility, building that trust. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're getting those first to market, right? So for those ones going to tax sale, actually going to auction, making sure that we get ahead of those ones and try to be a little bit more diligent with those, making sure that we're trying to get a hold of those owners. But if that ends up being too much inside the process, okay, that's fine. We're just going to continue doing what we're doing, generating leads, doing it the way that's working. And as we build our team up, we can start adding in those other things to continue tightening up that leaky faucet. But we don't have to tighten it up all the way initially. We just need to, get it to where it's going, control the drip. And then as we continue to build up, we'll continue to hire people to handle more processes, to tighten up that faucet all the way so that you're not losing any opportunity. And then we add in, the next vexation type scenario like probate, or maybe you start with probate. It's really up to you which one you start with here. You do probate, and probate, you do the same exact scenarios, right? Except for we're really getting that directly from the county, bringing that in, especially on a daily basis. We bring in like 20 from the county that just passed away over the last week or whatever, or overnight, who knows, right? And maybe it's only 3, right? Well, cool. Then I only have 3 to cover today. So I'm going to get those 3 in from the county. I'm going to get them in. I'm going to get them skip trace. I'm going to call those phone numbers. I'm going to send the direct mail, and I'm going to do that every single day, being first to market on that niche. That's really what we want to get to. And we want to continue adding in other niches. You got code enforcement stuff, the same scenario, right? And naturally, being first to market to those, you're going to end up having, at a certain point, when you're focusing on a certain amount of niches, you will end up having where, well, these code enforcements are coming in, but they're also tax delinquency, and you can handle that when that time comes. For now, don't worry about it. Focus on not adding a bunch of different data sets in, as much as focusing on building a system around that niche. And as you add in those next data sets, you'll make sure that you have filter criteria in place in your REISift account to make sure that that overlap is being handled. Okay.
Okay. So quick question for you. Is there an easier way than an upload to change an owner of a property? Like if part of the flow we discover we have the wrong owner.
Yeah, you'd have to do it on the owner's page. You can go into the owner's page of that record and just change the owner that way manually, or you could upload the list and do the swap owners.
Okay, because I've clicked edit in the property record and tried to do it. You say I would have to go to the owner's record?
Yeah, here, I'll show you really quick here. So if you were to be underneath the record of a property and open up that record,
yes.
This is just the property address.
Okay.
Right? So you click on the owner, and now, hey, this person owns, oh, that's me, that's why. You open up the owner, and you can edit the owner from the owner's profile.
That changes the owner of 215 Hollywood Boulevard.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That was a missing thing that
you can also, if it ends up being the same like address as the property address, you can do fill with address. And if they own multiple properties, you can choose which mailing address you want to swap it to.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
Which is a neat little feature people don't know about. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Yes, I needed that.
Yep. Cool, man. Any other questions for me? I think we have a direction forward that we can aim down, and then we can come back on in the next 3 or 4 months, and we get an update from you to see kind of where things are and what you've been doing. And of course, you have the challenge that you're working through now to help set up all these kind of intricacies that we've talked about. But anything else I can help out with?
Yes. When do you think that I should hire a lead manager? I don't have one now. I'm the lead manager.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm the best lead manager. Like, I'm very good on the phone, but I'm not as consistent as I would like an employee to be. So
yeah, that's hard as the owner. Sometimes, we aren't the best person for these different roles. And so again, this is resource dependent. You don't want to hire somebody and them not have anything to do, right? And so if things are falling by the wayside, you got to ask yourself, like, okay, well, is it
more important?
Is it cost effective to spend the money on it? So it just really depends. What you can do is you can hire like a unicorn, where you hire someone who's a lead manager, but when they don't have any leads to follow up on, they're doing outbound prospecting, right? And so that's a really good thing to do as well. So you're making sure that you're doing an income producing activity, throughout all of the day, that they're not able to do their primary role, which is really common in business.
And your lead manager is a VA, is that right?
I've had a lead manager in the Philippines. I've had lead managers in the US. It really just depends. If I were to, I prefer them US based than not. But it's totally up to the individual and the location of which you're in, and the types of individuals in that location. Right.
Things to think about. Yeah.
So I would say, if you can hire someone locally that can speak Spanish, for example, it'd probably be like a much better hire, because you're not going to spend a ton of money, and you're going to get the benefit of bilingual, and that's going to be a little bit more natural to like Dallas than someone from the Philippines managing those, as an example.
So would you go for lead manager over junior acquisitions? I mean, I'm acquisitions.
Yeah, I wouldn't add it. I wouldn't add in acquisitions. A lead manager is your gatekeeper, right? A lead manager should only be sending you people that are ready to make a deal happen.
So they just catch the lead and build rapport and kind of dig into the situation.
Yeah, and then figure out when they're ready to structure a deal, and you're the deal creator.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I do need a lead manager. That's right. Okay.
Yep, and they can be a lead manager as a primary role, but when there's, no leads to really manage for the day, like say they follow up with their 10 leads and there's not a ton of direct mail inbound that day coming in, then cool, let me hop on the phones.
Right. Okay.
Everybody, it's kind of like think about it from like the Army perspective, right? It doesn't matter what job you are in the Army, everybody's an infantryman. Everybody starts out as infantry, right? So in your business, it don't matter what job you are. When you don't got anything to do, everybody is an opportunity creator.
Right. Okay.
Cool.
Well, yes. Thank you, Tyler. You gave me a lot of direction. I'm actually going to just stick with the Sensei flow for now.
Yeah.
And I'll add in. When do you think would be wise to add in bulk? You helped me to decide now is best. But
yeah, once
add more team members.
Once the revenue from that process is coming in a sense to put it back into it, right? It shouldn't come out of your pocket to add that, right? The business should pay for that growth.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in week 4 of the Data to Dollars Challenge, because we talked about it in week 1 where we said, okay, what's our money and when does it make sense to spend more money in the marketing cheat sheet? So we're going to talk a little bit about that in operations and next week when we talk about sales and lead management. So
got it.
Cool.
Well, thank you, Tyler. I appreciate
awesome, dude. Thanks for hopping on. It was enjoyable talking with you. If there anything else comes up, let us know, and then we'll get you scheduled to come back in probably like 4 to 6 months from now and do a follow up with everybody. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right, bro. Thanks so much, man. Talk soon. Later.